we sort of misunderstand a lot of topics on planet Earth. That's clear enough. But a lot of us think of love, vulnerability, innocence. They sound very passive, almost automatically something that can be harmed. Be loving. Well, don't be too loving. Be trusting. Don't be, be careful. Don't be too trusting. That's kind of what the world tells us. So we don't have the opposite that much. This world is a major, major reflection of why we should be afraid. This world way too often is telling us that God doesn't exist. There's a fear about the concept of God, talking about God. You can't bring God into the workplace. It's getting to the point where even, within politics, the "in God we trust" is getting shamed. You got to be careful. Buildings that had the 10 Commandments put there, people complain and they picket and they, petition for such spiritual things to be removed, which is really weird. Because technically, this country was founded upon spiritual premise. That which was given from the light workers that passed on down from ancient Jerusalem and filtered through Knights Templars and original Masons and such, to the Native Americans. Because the Native Americans, there was a particular tribe, we won't get into that, but particular tribe that taught us, showed us a lot of what became our Constitution. A lot of people don't know that. But all of this is built, this country was built on spirituality. Hence the "in God we trust" and all these other mottos, e pluribus unum. And all these other, even on our money, statements that say "from many we're one," and so on. And our dollar bill, that pyramid and the all-seeing eye, all this is spiritual premise. And yet people can be in this country saying, we want that removed. It doesn't make any sense. That's like going into some stores and say, I would like employees to show up and actually be helpful. When in fact, they don't typically have any employees. It's like, no, help yourself. Why do you expect something like that? It isn't going to happen. It doesn't need to happen, shouldn't happen. Which is one reason why politics got all weird. Everybody's fighting because they don't even realize. Part of the fight is for spiritual principles. They just don't know it. They think it's about their opinions and their principles. It's about spiritual principles. So, if we have a party over here, if we're having a spiritual, like this service, this is a spiritual gathering. If somebody walks in and says, I don't like the spirituality in this gathering, there's only one solution: leave. Well, I don't like that you talk about God. Well, great. Go to any other place in town that doesn't talk. That's great. But their leaving is what needs to happen, not us not being spiritual. And the world has this movement, take away spirituality. If you make a spiritual movie, most critics are already going to pan it because it's spiritual. Back in the old days, I used to collect, cuttings of reviews and so forth because I thought it was really cool and informative about music. Whatever music I was into, Earth, Wind, and Fire, whatever. And every time, when Stevie Wonder went from doing kind of a soul music to his deeper spiritual stuff after he had a near-death experience, the critics followed right with it and said no. From yes, this is cool, groovy music, to no, who does he think he is? Who do these musicians think they are giving us spiritual nonsense? They're not our teachers. They used to just hammer them. So I'm saying this world has too much of that. We forgot that love, innocence, vulnerability are actually powerful. They're not to just continuously get stomped on. These are powerful forces. So recognizing that love has power to it, it gives us a chance to say, wait a second. It's okay for us to hold strength and hold strong and be true to what we believe, especially when it's founded upon spirituality. So one topic that gets kind of strained around this has to do with guides and getting guidance and vulnerability. All of these are the same to me. There are spiritual words like guidance and power. They sound very clear and strong. Inner strength. But inner strength comes from having inner peace, believe it or not. It doesn't come from external conviction or one's personal musculature. It comes from a knowingness, a clarity. You see, the guy who's a lion tamer, technically, the guy would only stand about 3 seconds of a chance if that lion changed its mind. He can't defeat the lion, but the lion hangs back because it's been programmed to believe in this guy having some power. But the main power is coming from that guy, the trainer's belief system. There's training, but there's also belief system. And if a lion tamer were training you, he would tell you, never forget, never for a minute stop believing that you have strength, because that lion needs to believe that you have a strength in its belief systems. Does that make sense? So that lion tamer has programmed himself to hold that kind of a presence. And I'm not saying that's a spiritual thing. It's a metaphor of a spiritual thing. We can have that kind of strength in this world. You can say yes and you can say no, all from a beautifully spiritual center. You don't have to say yes because you're a pushover New Ager, and you don't have to say no because you're a tyrannical control freak. We attribute that to these two different kinds of people. Pacifists say yes, and control freaks say no. It's not true at all. Truly spiritual people who are awakening mastery within themselves know how to have a balance. And they know how yes when it's yes, no when it's no. And either one, they're supposed to be saying with conviction, which is why Jesus said, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. So we have to remember that. And so our vulnerability makes us invincible. It makes us invulnerable, which sounds like a paradox, and perhaps it is to some minds. But it really makes sense. When I know love, then I know strength. When I know peace, I have conviction. When I know how to be vulnerable, truly vulnerable, not vulnerable like, I'm being so vulnerable, somebody's going to probably hurt me. That's not real vulnerability. Real vulnerability means I have no secrets. So what can you hurt me with? This is me. It has that you're just taking the heart, opening it. Watch out, people are going to throw rocks at that heart, that vulnerability. What can you hurt? Remember, I've said before, Martin Luther King was told, you're going to be killed if you don't stop these racial statements you're making, equality statements. He was terrified. He couldn't sleep in those last days. But when he prayed, which he did, he switched to prayer on this issue. He didn't call on man. I'm sure he might have called on a shoulder to cry on, which is really good to do. But he prayed, and he heard a voice say, essentially, they can't truly harm you. But they killed him. They can't truly harm you. So that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we're being told you're invincible when you center into God. Jesus was crucified, pretty sure. They shot Martin Luther King. So how safe are you? That's a tricky one, because if you go by what the eyes see, spiritual people lose. If you go by what the heart knows, then you recognize. Doesn't matter what they do. You actually rise to a whole different level when you maintain the integrity of what you believe. You don't just die and have good memories and get a holiday named after you. That's not the good stuff. The good stuff is what you feel afterwards. When you leave this planet, if you were on a 0 to 100 scale of spirituality, if you were a 65, you're now a 90 because you held to it. It doesn't matter how they killed you or what they think of you. It's you raised consciousness because you held to consciousness. And that's the tricky piece. When we think we're spiritual and have a certain level of consciousness, it's what we're thinking and it's what we're saying. It's not real until it's actually proven, so to speak. Till you actually put it to the test. You follow? So that moment that you actually live it is when you become it. Saying it is one thing. Oh, I really, believe in good health and so forth. How often do you do yoga? Oh, I don't really have time for that. Well, then don't talk to me about good health. It doesn't make any sense. That's technically hypocrisy. So us living it. So those individuals like Martin Luther King saying, I'm spiritual, saying, this and that about God and strength and equality is only theory until he's able to walk through his own fears of being killed or harmed. Then he becomes a master. Because you lived it. Living it by human standards does look sometimes like we lose. You lived it. you took this on and you said, you know, no matter what, I'm terrified, but no matter what, I'm going to talk to my partner about some issues. But they might leave. Yeah, they might. You will be a better person once you do it. Now, here's the problem. You go ahead and talk to them. They reject your ideas and needs. So then you say, well, thank you for that good advice, Michael and whomever, you know, telling me I should probably talk this stuff over because now I'm alone. That's again what the world keeps trying to do, is prove to us that standing by spirituality you lose. It keeps trying to tear down and shame the principles, like I said about the country, that we live by. So you've got to push through that, and you've got to be able to say, you know, even if it means losing a friend or a family member, you know, they don't like me anymore because I have these beliefs, then do it. Now, I don't agree with us claiming to be more spiritual than others, dumping our spiritual beliefs on others, and then saying, well, you can go ahead and leave me because I'm just more spiritual than you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about when we have true humility and we're doing our best to live our spiritual life. If in those moments you're rejected, Jesus already predicted that. Blessed are you who are persecuted, and so forth. I'm going to paraphrase, for my name's sake, and combine a couple of ideas in the Beatitudes. Blessed are you who go through this kind of crap on planet Earth. What does he mean by for my name's sake? For your beliefs. For your standing up for greater spirituality. But I don't think you should, you know, try to preach it or dump it on people, because I believe in tact and so forth as well. I did have a church once tell me, you know, they asked me, what kind of songs would you like? Usually they ask, is there particular songs you'd like played by their band or whatever? And one time I named a song similar to the one we heard today. And I was told, well, that's a little too spiritual. It has like a little bit of a Jesus feel to it. And I'm like, wow, isn't that interesting? What the hell do you people do at your church? I mean, if you don't like Jesus, you've got problems. I mean, I'm okay that you like Jesus and Buddha, but when you've got issues because the name Jesus is mentioned, that's pretty scary. Then what do you rely on? Are we allowed to say Holy Spirit? Oh, that's too traditional. What do we have to call? Oh, great energy up in the ethers. Is that neutral enough? Well, yes, some of them are going to say, yeah, we like that. But the very idea that I have to shame it and hold back on it, that is not the Krishna consciousness, man. Krishna's like, what? Get on the chariot and ride. Let the arrows fly, baby. I mean, Krishna was like, wow, let's do it. He wasn't like, let's shame ourselves, let's hold back. He's like, no. When you have a belief and you know and you feel it to be right and true, go for it. Was that an amen? You know, and we along these lines about getting guidance and what guides to listen to, it gets very tricky. In a place like Sedona, but anywhere in the New Age community around the world, we have no shortage of people telling us what their guides are telling us we should be doing. If you talk to Catholics, they'll say, well, the Pope said. Somebody else is going to say the Dalai Lama said. His Holiness the Pope, His Holiness. I don't even know what made them think these people are holy. How are they holy? And if they're holy, aren't you holy too? I don't really understand that. What could be holy besides God itself? And therefore, the God piece in us is holy. So I don't really understand attributing, no offense if you happen to be a part of those traditions, but I don't really understand that. And if a person's truly that holy, then they should be able to be outside digging in the trenches and pulling weeds with us. I had a couple pull up yesterday when we're out gardening, and I'm, you know, because it's nice and raining and freezing, so I had my usual swim trunks on and a t-shirt, and we're weeding. And this one person pulled up because it was when we were finishing. I had a private session to do, and it was really beautiful. They said, it's kind of funny. I've never seen, they come from a more traditional church, and they said, I've never seen a pastor, they called me, a pastor actually doing weeding and yard work, especially in shorts. And to me, this is what they should be doing. If I just sat around in a suit, wow, that would be weird. But in a suit and a tie and saying to you folks, let's make sure you folks get some weeding done today, I don't even understand that. Well, how could we tell someone to do something we wouldn't be willing to do? It just kind of doesn't make sense to me. I'm weird, I know, in a lot of ways, but this one just doesn't make sense to me. So, your holiness to me is, can you get out and dig weeds with us? I mean, can you take the presence you claim to have and bring it into the trenches? We all have bad moments, temptations to have bad days. I get that. But do you really do your best? Because if you can grab hold of that spirituality and bring it out while you dig weeds, to me, that means you are bringing holiness into the work, which makes the work now whole. Part of the holy experience. That's why some artists, like Da Vinci, would get in the zone when he paints or draws or whatever he's doing. He's getting in the zone. He's not just kind of one personality one direction and another personality the other. Because consistency is important to be good channels and to the channels you go to. Be careful who you go to. You know, if you listen to people who say, my guides are telling me to tell you something, you know, you can stop and say, that's interesting because my guides haven't told me that I need to listen to anything, you know, so where do we go with that? It's a stalemate. Now, if I don't listen to you and you have guidance, more often than not, I would say 90% of the time, those people have gotten angry with me. I try to hear what they say. I never say, no, I don't want to hear what your guides say. I don't do like childlike things and block you out. But people often have this, what you need to do. You remember the song, John Lennon, one of his last tunes, I've been watching the wheels go round and round. And he says, people say I'm crazy, dreaming my life away. And they give me all kind of advice to save me from ruin. That's what he's talking about. And they tip, and I tell them I'm doing fine. And what do? He says in the song. They tip their heads and they look at me as if I've lost my mind. I tell them there's no hurry. I'm just sitting here doing time. You know, like we're in this illusion. We're playing the game. I feel good. I feel good about myself. He had Mick Jagger nagging him saying, you know, John, you've really lost it, man. What are you doing? You're supposed to be a musician. And he just told him, dude, back off. I think you're insane. I think you're a nut. I think you're a drug addict and so forth. And I'm clean and sober now. So what are you going to do? Who are you to criticize my life? Because I became a father. And I became a family man. And I became spiritual. You see, there's always everybody out there ready to be the critic. But the guy found peace in his own version of peace. So we have no shortage of people telling us what we need to be doing. And I think it's fine to listen to people and note that there might be something there. I'm not saying we should be closed-minded. I'm saying it's great to be open. But if they're truly coming from a good place, those people would say, I don't know. I do my best to give you feedback that I think I'm supposed to give. Okay, I didn't ask for it. That's one warning sign. But I'm open. Go ahead and share that. Now they share it. If you don't act on it and they get mad, that's a very clear sign they're not coming from the right place, in my opinion. Now, if you take the advice and you apply it, I think that's a pretty good sign that things are pretty good. This is partly what Jesus meant by the fruits you shall know them. It means the advice as well as the channels themselves. By the fruits meaning the integrity, the reaction on whether you'll hear the information or not. Jesus was telling us when you get guidance in yourself or from others, test it. Test the spirit, they say. Make sure it feels clear and clean. I would ask you, you're a channel. Now, I could be in the middle of nowhere and have some homeless person walk up and share something, and I'm still going to say thank you, because there might be something there. There might be something there. I hear it and go, oh, okay, that's kind of cool, and I'll do what I can to listen to it and absorb it and take it in to see if it fits anywhere, see if it's right for me. I don't just shame it from who it looks to be by their, outside, but I'll check it out and see if it feels right. There are people, I remember this one instance where I was walking through this psychic fair. And I think I did a lecture there or something during the, one of the talks. And so afterwards I was kind of walking and browsing to see what they had at the show. And this one psychic pulls me aside and, it's like, oh, Michael, aren't you Michael Mirdad? Yes. Could I share something with you? Well, sure. And then I'm sensing I'm supposed to tell you something. And there's a part of me that's like, okay, here we go again, Just a couple weeks ago, there was somebody who told me I'm supposed to cut all my hair off. That was one guide, and no offense if you're watching, but no. That was probably Delilah, and I was sense. Anyway. You have to know the backstory on that. Anyway, so it's like this lady says, I'm sensing I'm supposed to tell you something. And I'm like, okay. And I am open. I really am. So I check it out and I sit and she says, Michael, and it was especially important at that time in my life. This is back in about 88. And she said, Michael, you have a nice healing energy about you. Even when you hug a person, you're transmitting something very powerful and very beautiful. And she said, don't ever stop hugging and don't ever stop touching because you have a really powerful, and I was like, oh, thank you. But I didn't say anything more. I was like, oh, wow, thank you. But in my own head, I was at that time wondering, the whole thing about careful, don't hug too much, don't be too affectionate, going through that question in my own mind. How much shouldn't I? Just because you should. You should ask yourself questions all the time. Check in all the time. Don't assume everything you say and do is right. Just, check in and make sure it feels right. So she was actually mirroring to me a beautiful answer. She picked it up out of the blue, which is great. It shows her authenticity as a psychic, as a reader. But it meant something beautiful. And when you get guidance, generally it should be inspiring. Do you want it? How do you know if it's right? When people tell you bad, 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 watch out, negative, negative, it may not be a good channel. They say even with Edgar Cayce, there was one time, there was something coming through him, some prophecies. Just a few times, but it happened. And they were saying, well, watch out for this and that and the other, and it all sounded fairly decent, and it's just prophetic, kind of like Nostradamus. But when they were done, they said, who's giving this information? And he gave a name of a particular entity, and it's fine, it's just an angelic name, that sort of name. But at other times in the readings, it sounded like it alluded to the idea that the being that gave those answers, because they were afraid, the people asking for the reading, they were in a fearful mind, asking fearful questions about the end of the world. They attracted a fearful being that came in and answered correctly the likely fearful kinds of things that would happen. And that was a bit of an important lesson for Cayce. On that note, because we have people, you should do this and you should take my advice and I have guidance to give you. Well, Edgar Cayce, as I've said many times, is really unsurpassed as a reader, as a clairvoyant. His accuracy rate is way out there. A typical psychic is considered to be, a real good one is considered to be 65% accurate. The famous Jean Dixon, they said, was 60-something% accurate. She was pretty popular. She's the one who foretold the assassination of Kennedy and got him a message to his secretary who didn't reach him in time to warn him, and I think it was that day he was killed. She was accurate. She was good accuracy. And there's many others, popular, that are 60-something%. We think accurate means 90. No. Believe it or not, even in science, 51 means something unusual is happening. 51% accuracy. Because by science, everything's 50-50 probabilities. So anything better than that's already unique. If you keep doing better than that, that's really unique. Cayce was 80-something% accurate, like a whole nother level. And he's doing readings, and this one time, somebody contacts him. It's supposed to be like the biggest clairvoyant medium, one of the biggest in the world. And contacts him and says, my guides are saying, the beings that speak to me, they're saying that you should allow us, these beings that this channel gets, these beings are asking if you would permit them to come through you. Cayce checks it out and says, no thanks. So he goes on with his usual work, and they come back to him another time. The beings are being more insistent. They're saying to you that if you would let these beings that come through this other channel, come through you, it'll raise the whole level of your readings. It'll raise the level of the integrity and the clarity of the information you're bringing through. So Cayce says, all right, I'll ask, So he goes into his trance and they ask, the beings are being persistent. They're saying, you'll get a greater level of knowing, a greater level of clarity. The being working through Edgar Cayce says, ask those entities if they know more than the God that created them. Yeah, think about that. You get that? I got to chill when I said that. What he's saying is, we're going to God to get information. We're still a channel, Casey, so we still can make mistakes and have filters, but we go to God for our information. Especially when entities are saying, we want you to give up the channel you're using and let us come through. Casey's response, the being in Casey, the angels and light beings and Christ that works through Casey, said, really? And answers with that beautiful answer. Do you know more than the God that created you? Just putting these entities in their place. Now, those entities might have had some accuracy level. They might have had some kinds of power here and there. But go to God is what I always say. It's okay that God's answer comes through whatever. God's answer can come through the phone you guys get in your lattes. You know, they put little pictures. It can come through a fortune cookie. Go to God for it and let God decide who it is that's going to give you the information. Does that make sense? Because it'll get, disseminated properly. It might be an old friend from high school who's getting it in a dream state to tell you something, and they reach out, hey, how's it going? And you were really going through a dark period, and their voice just lifted you. That's still go to God. Don't go to your deceased relatives on a Ouija board for information. They didn't know much when they were alive. Why would they know anything now? I remember this one time, somebody said to Casey, could you please channel, because Casey could just spot anything. Would you please channel our whatever, Uncle Charlie, who passed away? And Casey's reply was, you didn't talk to him when he was alive. Why would you want to talk to him now? But notice the sarcasm in a way of Casey putting them in their place. Everybody loves the little cool, the fad, the fun, psychic this and channel that. But where's the integrity? If you are a channel, I don't care if it's healing, psychic, or even as a counselor, whatever, it is important for us to do our best to keep nurturing higher consciousness and then having an integrity, which means to integrate. So not only build my spiritual my consciousness, but to integrate and have an integrity of that center that I'm developing. So I need to become a better and better person. The prophets of Israel had to live spiritual principles. And if they strayed, it was deeply going to be affecting them, even the kings like David or Solomon. It would strangely, intensely affect them. Why? Because when you're going to claim to be a king of Israel, a prophet of Israel, you have taken yourself up to a bar that you need to live up to. If you're going to be a channel, live up to it. I'm not saying we have to be perfect, but be vulnerable and say, yeah, isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that I'm a really, really great person and a great reader, but I still have an addiction of some kind? But I'm working on it. That's what I would want to hear. But I'm working on it. I love the non-hypocrisy. I love that. We can have flaws, but just owning them makes a huge difference. So, think about it. Many of you have seen me talk many times. You probably, some people watching videos, it adds up into the hundreds. But how often have you heard me say things like, I have spiritual beings around me. Oh, hold on. I was mid-sentence. Hold on. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Archangel Michael is telling me to say something. How often do you hear me say that? How often do you hear me talk about my unique powers and the cacophony of sound from the heavens, or the cavalcade of celebrity entities and angels up here with me? The answer is never. Have you ever heard Jesus say, yeah, I'm Jesus, but do you know what angels I have talking to me? It's amazing. I got some major angel energy going on. Did you ever hear Buddha say, anything about channeling? Buddha talked about, he said, I don't give you information I've read in books. I'm giving you truth that's known in the soul. Edgar Casey, I'm giving you information known in the soul. Ernest Holmes, he's saying the Christ is the name of God in man. That's what you go to. I have people say, my higher self has something to tell you. Well, what is your higher self, and how much in touch with it are you? How often has your higher self proven to be accurate? I'm just curious. I'd like to know. Just like if you go to a broker or investor or whatever those people are called, and you go, hi, I have $50,000, I'm just going to give this to you, and not ask, do you have a decent success rate in your investments? It wouldn't make sense to give that money to some people. So it's the same. Why would we invest our guidance into beings we don't even know? And many of them are just malevolent, mischievous beings. So go to God and let God introduce you to fairies and elementals. Go to God and let God bring through guides and angels and whatever. It'll happen. Some people think, well, I don't know. I haven't had major close communications with God lately. It seems so distant. What I'll do is I'll just talk to those who I think I can get in touch with. My next door neighbor channels angels. I'll go to them to talk to angels. Or, I'm hoping that one day I can talk to my higher self. Don't settle. I know that sounds like the quick treatment, which is kind of a fast food spirituality, but don't settle. Go to God and trust that God will come to you in some form. And then know it can come through anyone. A person you're walking by, a stranger in the street, like they say in the scriptures, even out of the mouths of babes. The way I found out that I was having a second child was my oldest child was playing with a toy phone. I walked in the room and she was talking, and toy phone, and I was like, hey, hon, who are you talking to? She said, the angels. And I said, oh, what do they have to say? She said, they're sending another baby. I'm like, what? Why didn't they come to me and tell me to use a condom? No, so, anyway, sorry, honey. But, yeah, I know you're going, did he just say that? Well, so that's what, but it's true. Like, she's saying they're sending another baby. And I'm like, really? Yeah. I said, okay, and I'll test it. Is it a boy or a girl? And she goes, she's talking, and she goes, they said that they're not sure, it's still spinning around up in the clouds. Which is a very amazing child's perspective of, it's undecided, but you see, I mean, it was like, and then I was like, uh-oh. Better talk to mom, man. I got to go talk to the mom, and say, the Lord just told me you have been immaculately conceived. No. So, do you have something that I'm supposed to see? Oh, got it. Okay. I thought it was they're giving me some of the questions and comments from online to keep up with. All right. I want to share a quote from A Course in Miracles. When you think that your friends who tell you, my guides are telling me to tell you such and such, or when you think your own know everything, when you really get extremely confident that like the beings coming to Casey, when you think that anything knows better than God, here's something to consider. It says, the Course says, in order to judge anything rightly, or to know a right from a wrong decision, you would have to be fully aware of an inconceivably wide range of things, past, present, and to come. You would have to recognize in advance all the effects of that decision or judgment on everyone and everything involved in them in any way, and you would have to be certain that there's no distortion in your perception of the guidance you're getting, so that your judgment about it would be wholly fair to everyone on whom it rests now and in the future. Who is in a position to do this? Who, except in their most grandiose fantasies, would claim something like that for themselves? Do you get what that's saying? To say that you're clear, completely clear with your guidance, is to claim that you know that that guidance is totally right, and on that you would have to know in advance all of the effects it could have on anybody involved, and that effect would be for the greater good. That's why I say just shut up, Play it safe and just err to the side of I don't know anything. Rather than, no, my guides know. My guides are bigger than your guides. My guides can beat up your guides. Instead of playing around with all that, try humility. Listen to anything. Listen to the radio and a song comes on. Listen to synchronicities. That's all fine. But still test the spirits. You don't have to jump off the cliff when they tell you to. Ask why. Why would I do that? Where's the greater good? Is this God speaking? Take a moment to discern and think about these things. Out of the Course, it says, make it a habit to ask for help or guidance when and where you can. Then you can be confident that all the wisdom will be given to us whenever we need it. Ask for help. But he's not talking about ask for help from your deceased aunt. He's saying go to God. Now, the good news is whether you go to Jesus, who's an embodiment of the Christ, whether you go to the Father, God, whether you go to Yahweh, Jehovah, the Holy Spirit, they're all the same name. They're all the name of various concepts of God. Go to God in the best way you know God to be. And if really the best you know God to be is just a deceased relative who occasionally visits and says, hi, I just want you to know I'm okay on the other side, fine. If that's the best you know God to be. But definitely try to get to the best, highest you know God to be. The Course says about following guidance. Following guidance promises a future undisturbed, without a trace of sorrow, and with joy that constantly increases. But what guidance? Go to God, and God will filter it down. God might start with your deceased relatives being or even living people, to be the voice you can hear because it's tangible. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as God assigned that teacher, healer, counselor. If you go to them because you don't believe in anything higher, you've already established a limit on what you can receive. Did that make sense just then? If you're limiting what you think you can go to, you're limiting the answers. Go to God, and then be aware of all the signs. You go to God and an acorn falls from a tree, it could be an answer. You go to God and it could be out of the mouths of babes. You go to God and it could be that you feel guided to go and sit with a psychic and get a second opinion. Or to a doctor and get another opinion. Let everyone have the right to be a voice of God. If they preach to you and try to guilt you, shame you, fear you into doing things, I would think twice about it. It doesn't mean that if a doctor says, we have a situation you need to deal with, you don't have to go, well, that's negative, so that can't be from God. Be careful about that. No, it might very well be from God. If the person, though, is being unreasonably fear-based, I would just think twice about it. Because the doctor's telling you something that's scary might be your own fears about what they're telling you manifesting as a fearful-looking channel, as it were. So you get another opinion or whatever. I also believe, people ask me all the time about this, what do you go to? Where do you go to? How do you... I feel comfortable that I get guidance inside, and it happens beautifully, clearly, efficiently, and effectively. And I let everyone else contribute. I don't just go, I'm doing fine, thank you. I let everyone contribute. Meaning that I get the guidance, but I also watch and listen. Sometimes professional decisions, let's say. I get the guidance, and sometimes I can feel it's dead on and we're just going to launch something. But it's nice to still ask some of the folks that help and work with me on filming or on social media or whatever. Clearly they know more about those things than I do, so I just ask, what do you think about this or that? It's beautiful to be open and get second opinions. And I also love synchronicities. I think they're amazing. But just because I get a synchronicity, because we've all done that, I'm thinking about buying this car, but that one's so much cooler. God, look at it, it's so sporty. I just feel, when I'm in there, I'm just alive. And then there's this domestic-y kind of car. This one costs a little more, and I'll have to work a little more hours to be able to get it, but that I feel when I'm driving it. That's clearly a sign, And then you go to the car lot and you're ready to, but you can afford this one, so you're probably going to look at that one. And you get on the lot, and they say, I noticed you were looking at that one. Oh, you did? That's synchronicity. No, it isn't. And then they say to you, someone else was just looking at that car an hour ago. And you go, that's a sign from God that I'm supposed to get it. No, it isn't. But how else could I have created these synchronicities? Oh, wait. The license plate on the car had an M in it. That's me. That's clearly me. No, this is not a synchronicity. This is when we, in our little ego selves, know how to blast out of ourselves all kinds of signs to prove that we want what we want and it's right. That careful. The ego has just as much capability of putting signs out there to confirm our self-centeredness, our ambitions, as does spirit. It's just that, are you so weak that you listen to those all the time? One thing you watch for in yourself is the guidance will come to you based on various things. First of all, your level of consciousness first and foremost. You'll match, the level of guide you get are going to match your level of consciousness. If you're really broken down and you have no spiritual development, it might lessen what kind of guidance you get. Although there are people who are majorly falling apart in their lives and they have had moments when they've seen angels, that's an exception to the rule. You have no idea what other lifetimes they developed the ability to even believe in angels. So don't just buy that anybody can see an angel. The level of consciousness will first determine. But there's other things. Your commitment. If you're the type of person that says, on your knees, tears in your eyes, Heavenly Father, Mother God, give me some guidance and so on, and I want your guidance, I need it, and I'm needing clarity. Look at me, I really, really am in a place of need. If you just show me a sign, I'm going to take this coin and I'll flip it. And if it's heads, I will do what, this. And if it's tails, I'll do that. Just tell me what you want me to do, oh Almighty Lord. Flip, catch, flip. Okay, 2 out of 3. Oh Lord. As soon as you do that, the entire universe is laughing at you, going, we got another one. A false committed human. So when you say, and I'm not saying just because you acted on the first one, it was necessarily right. My accuracy is going to depend on my spiritual development, my consciousness, but also things like my commitments. So when I'm known on the other side as the kind of guy that keeps flipping coins, if you had a car salesman, a lawyer, an accountant that had a reputation for not being in integrity, you might not want to use them. It's the same with them on the other side. Well, let's give him some guidance because look, he's got tears in his eyes. He's definitely serious. They'll go, no, check this out. And they'll go and get a file on you. Look how many times this guy's flipped the coins for 2 out of 3. And then 4 out of, 5 or whatever it happens to be, 3 out of 5. So they're aware consciously, in consciousness, how much you are serious when you ask. And if you haven't shown conviction and commitment, you stand a chance of getting less accurate information. Show that not only will you hear it, you will believe it. Now, of course, you leave room for having made mistakes here and there, but that also you will act on it. Now, if you've been lazy on this, and you've done this 1,000 times where you flipped it more than once and so on, you might have to take more than once for them to take you seriously, because you're the boy who cried wolf on the other side. Show that you mean it. Show that you will act upon this. Then when you do, you don't have to jump over the cliff to prove your commitment. What you can do is you get the ball rolling to see if it starts showing signs of good fruit from that decision you're making. You test it out, you kind of get it moving. And for me, when I see numerous synchronicities, when I see definite evidence of, yes, this is clear, this is right, greater good is a good way to weigh consciousness or weigh guidance. The greater good. God has this incredible way of providing the greater good, where humans tend to go, good for this person, bad for that one, win, lose. I watch and I see, typically it's win-win, and it's incredible and it feels right, and we move forward. But that's what I do. I watch and listen. The universe is typically reflecting our consciousness, sometimes in frighteningly accurate ways. I remember there's an album by the Beatles, Magical Mystery Tour. And in there, you flip through, one of the pictures is John Lennon standing in front of a sign. The sign says, the best way to go is by MDC, which are the initials of his assassin. So it's like 15 years later, here he's standing in front of a sign. The best way to go is by MDC. It's like, wow. We all know things before they happen. The synchronicities in the universe, they literally kind of come out and manifest, materialize to reflect consciousness. The song, and this isn't one of those Paul is dead conspiracy stories. This is the true story. If you listen to the song Come Together, at the beginning of the song, it goes, shoom, dum, 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 you know the song, right? He actually says the words, shoot me, dum, 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 shoot me. Dum. That's what he does in the real song. You can hear it in some of the outtakes of that. What a weird thing. On some level, he knows. On some levels, you knew what person you were getting involved with when you said, I do. On some level, we knew. They were the perfect person to screw us up, to mess with us, to manifest our fears, our insecurities. We knew it before we even met them. I can sense it coming. You know, I've had friends that had, there was a girl I knew that was a receptionist. She welcomes the client that comes in. She's at a doctor's office. The client comes in. Hi, good to see you. Good to see you. This girl is going to get married. Nobody knows it. She hasn't announced it yet. The woman says, hi, good to see you. And she signs in. She says, do you mind if I take your hand for a minute? This is not typical. She says, no. Takes her hand and goes, you're getting married, aren't you? She said, yes, I haven't told anybody. She said, don't do it. And that girl lived in hell for 10 years of a marriage. It's there. All that we know is already leaking through and then reflected by the world back to us, but nobody knows to listen. Not only do we not know and remember how to listen, people are too afraid to listen. Because if you tell me not to marry, which you did anyway, but you tell me, it's actually my soul saying, please take this girl's hand and tell her not to marry him. But the ego self's going, this would be perfect to wear us down and show our low self-worth. So the ego self keeps trying to detach us and cut us away from the guidance all around us that's screaming back to us. Here's what's really going on. But people have forgotten to listen, but they've forgotten because they're afraid. It is scary to hear, you know, do this and don't do that and follow guidance. Because if I don't get married now, then maybe I'll grow to be an old maid, or maybe my father was right. Nobody would ever love me. I mean, it's all that stuff. It's terrifying. So it's a way to prove them all wrong. It's for some of us. Decisions we've made did not come from spirit. So we usually know because of the hell we end up in. Does that mean we're bad people? Not at all. What you're supposed to do after having done it is rethink it. That's a good idea. The other is to say, once it has lived out its time in the effects, you know, in the effects of whatever decision I made, what can I learn from that? And it might be, I actually had some low self-worth, got married to try to cover that up. Instead of getting married again to cover it up, what I'll do is maybe, I don't know, work on my self-worth. Once I do that, I raise the bar of my consciousness, and now I can attract somebody that matches that rather than somebody that matches my low self-worth. Does that make sense? So the idea is what are we doing? Where are we coming from? Because it's not just other people giving you guidance that we've failed sometimes to attract higher guides. It's ourselves. Do you want higher guidance? Be a higher person. Do you want greater integrity? Have more integrity. Do you want more accuracy? Then act on these things and show I'm serious. You give me guidance, I'm going to act on it. Not the jump over the cliff kind of act, but like I said, I will at least get the ball rolling and watch for the signs that this is pretty good. Now, in closing, remember that when it comes to getting clear guidance, and if people question your guidance, let others do as they may, but for me and mine, we will serve the living God. You know, I'm going to do the best I can to follow my guidance. I've had people tell me this and that, just like the John Lennon song we talked about earlier. Here's what you should do, and there's what you should do. And he says, they think I'm crazy, but I'm actually feeling quite together. So when people don't like what you're doing or that you don't take their guidance, let others do as they may. Don't judge them. Don't hate them. They might actually have good intentions. You don't know, so stay out of that mess. Just say thank you and then integrate what you can. That's all. See if there's something that fits. But before you're getting guidance, and before you as a reader give guidance to other people, if you happen to be a reader, a counselor, whatever it is, remember, people are trying to, I want an answer. You're way ahead of the game. You're stepping out there too fast. You're jumping ahead. Before you even get guidance or ask for guidance, ask for the right question to be even asking. Because if you say, hey God, should I get this car or that car? God's going, I don't even know what a car is. Because cars are illusions that you guys have made up. I only know love. You're asking me, should you choose this love or that love? Or this lack of love and that lack of love? That's all I know is love. And we're saying, no, really. This one or that one. Which one should I get? There's a quote in the Course, I forgot what to ask for. You know what that is? That's the prayer of the divine feminine again, which is, I don't know. I'm open. We open the chalice, the grail, to be filled by God and guidance when we say, I think I want this car. I think I have a choice between two cars, but I don't know. Show me. God might have been saying, I wouldn't get a car because you're moving soon across country. Then you got to haul the dang thing with you, which is going to cost you money. And then you're going to be going, God, why did you have me get the car? And God's going to say, got nothing to do with that. So I don't even know what to ask. You know, God, it seems like it's a car that I'm needing. It seems like it's a partner, but I don't know. Give me the right words to even ask. Start by even asking for the guidance on the right question. Then, ask to be clear of the ego as best you can for an answer. Then, make sure you're asking for the right interpretation. You see the progression here? Ask for the clear answers, of course, but the right interpretation, because I can screw this up anywhere along the way. I could be getting step 1, 2, 3, 4 right, and I could even mess up the interpretation. Let me ask for clear interpretation. Then I also want to ask for the clarity and the courage to put it into action. What am I saying in a nutshell? Guide me all the way through. Not just, hey God, what do you think? Wait, never mind. You know, because I got some fly hit the window when I said, should I marry Joe or Sam? You know, bing, oh, it was Sam. When I said Sam, the fly hit the wall. Maybe it meant Sam will bug you the rest of your life. You know, don't jump to conclusions. Don't, be careful. I don't know, but I noticed the bug, but I don't know. Oh, Lord. Did you notice the fly, Lord? Okay, just saying, in case you missed that. And I heard birds tweeting when I brought up, you know, Sally or Joan, you know, as an option too. I heard birds tweeting. Maybe that means something, Lord, but I don't know. You can have some fun and attitude with it, but stay open. I don't know. Show me and guide me. And it's incredible because sometimes you'll hear the words of the right question to be asking. Other times you'll start feeling these shifts. It's almost like a knot starting to get untangled. And it starts to go from locked up, suddenly it starts to unravel. And you start to feel like, I don't even feel like I need to ask the question right now for some reason. I'll just let it go. And that's quite beautiful. The synchronicities can come in your dreams, but so can your own issues come up in our dreams, right? So we can, at the end of the day, remember, whatever answers you get, what is it you ultimately want in your life as a consciousness? Let's say you're a person that really wants to feel peace and joy. Great. Whatever guidance you get in your life or from other people, just ask yourself whether it resonates with peace and joy. If it doesn't, that's the simplest of all the answers here today. If it doesn't resonate with what you know to be God, which is peace and joy, then I would think twice about it. If it does resonate, it's probably right. And I would still then watch for the confirmations, the synchronicities, multiple, you know, everybody's different. I know people that manifest all kinds of synchronicities and they're totally screwed up and it doesn't mean anything because their mind is so good at manifesting what their ego wants. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is know, okay, I don't want to be involved in this decision. What I want is God. That's all. What I really want to connect with is God. That's ultimately what it's about, is that we want God. We think we want a car. What you really want is connection with God. You think you want to have sex. What you really want is to connect with God. It's just taking the form of your body sensations. You think you want to have something to eat. You actually don't have a stomach or a body. It just looks like you do. The soul is always saying something different from what the body is saying and the ego is saying. So try to ask what the soul is looking for, and it's always God. So when you think you're hungry, just say, you know, this is funny. I'm getting hungry now. I'm getting agitated and I'm being mean to people because I'm hungry. But what's that about? That's just because my ego's getting ticked off because I starved it for too long. And it's saying, if you give me some food, I won't react so much. Well, I don't want to live by that. I don't want some demon that needs fed. So what I'll do is, you know what I'm really looking, this is kind of funny. I get it. What I'm really looking for is God, not you, body or ego. And I just take a couple centering breaths and act and feel like I'm calling in the presence of God and feel until I feel a shift. Then I feel this kind of a tranquility or peace. At that point, I know I've now been fed. Then I'll decide whether I also still want to have something to eat. Give to God what is God's first. Then you can render to Caesar what Caesar's. Go ahead and feed the body now. It doesn't matter. Get the God piece first. I'm going to ask everybody to please take a few centering breaths. As we're centering for a brief meditation, all of us in this room are recognizing we all play a part. You're not being meditated at. You're not being told what to do. We're all in this together, co-creating this grace, this bliss, this meditation. And we're also holding in consciousness. The people are watching. And that means we all are playing a part in the world's changes, guys. And they're participating with us by us recognizing. Wherever you are watching, from wherever you are, you're right here with us. We mean that sincerely, and we're there with you. There are people watching from Korea, South Africa, Canada, Alaska, California, Louisiana, Connecticut, Illinois, New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, Missouri, New Jersey, Colorado, and so on. That's a lot of places, and that's just naming a handful of them. Think about this. Is this an accident? Is this linear? Are we just having a service that we're shooting over the internet and people are just happen to be watching? Or are we actually in a co-creation process? Are we all actually a tribe of godlings? Are we really just all participating in the Great Awakening or the Great Undoing process? We're actually and very much part of that process. It could be a person watching for the first time. It doesn't matter. If their heart is feeling connected with us all here, then we're there. We're connecting. So we all hold that grace and that appreciation in our hearts. And we'll meditate on a prayer. Do your best to feel this. I make no decisions alone today. Instead, I make them with God. All decisions that I have made or would have made outside of the love of God, all decisions I would have tried to make outside of my holiness, all decisions I have made affecting my life, this world, or this day, outside of the love of God, I choose to surrender right now. I give up all unknown decisions and known decisions, conscious and unconscious. Every decision that was about who I am and who everyone else is. All of them, if they're outside of holiness, I was mistaken. And I release them all to you, God. To think that we have war and think that we need a solution called a war being over. They're all my thoughts and opinions. I have none about this anymore. I give it all to you, God. I choose not to become someone whining about or calling for something to be fixed. Instead, I choose to be the solution itself. By giving up my and our contributions to fear and hurtful behaviors in this world. I give it all up. And I deny the effects of all of my previous ego-based decisions. Any ego-based decision affecting my life and this world. I give it all up and I deny their effects. If the causes are gone, there can be no effects. That's the truth of God. And having emptied myself of the past causations and denying their effects on me, I now call in a new causation. Your perfect and holy presence, Father, Mother, God. I call in the presence of your Holy Spirit to be my guide, my teacher, my healer, to be the voice of guidance in and through me. So guide me, and I will listen. Guide me and show me the ways and the path of peace and grace. Show me how to decide from love instead of fear, from forgiveness instead of hate. My little self has controlled me far too much. And now I choose the God presence, the voice of God I am. speaking in and through me, and show me that love is strength. Show me that vulnerability is making me invulnerable. Show me that being peaceful is fantastic, and it means action, righteous, beautiful action. And by choosing you as my guide, I now begin to fill up with all the gifts of God. When I've made ego decisions, there were karmic effects, and now that I choose the Holy Spirit of God as my guide, there too will be effects, but they're called the gifts of God. And for the next half a minute, let's breathe those gifts in and imagine and try to intuit what they might be. They could be peace, they could be sensations in the body because of a healing taking place. We stay completely open instead of directing the guidance. We stay open, and let's breathe into that for a moment. The gifts of God manifesting in my relationships, my work, my income, family, whatever categories are being brought to the altar here, I'm open, and I let these gifts descend into all these areas of my life, bringing me absolute abundance in all forms, peace in all forms, healing in all forms. Imagine the presence of God in the heavens pouring into this room and into each of us. And wherever people might be sitting in their rooms, see it. We're all connected. We're speaking for one another, that we have the right to do this, and allow a healing presence, like the hands of God cupping over the room you're in and over your head, pouring light and higher vibration into your heart and soul, raising us to a glorious new day, raising us to a glorious new life. When I am healed, I am not healed alone. And I can feel all of my brothers and sisters. This is our voice speaking out. I can feel all of my brothers and sisters everywhere joining in this prayer. Feeling that holy presence descending into our being and raising our vibration and consciousness. I feel as though when I leave here today, when I'm done with the meditation, that it actually stays with me. I'm changed somehow. I'm changed. I'm different. A whole new level of clarity, confidence, trust, peace, joy. And slowly begin integrating it into every cell of your being. Before we open our eyes, let's take this with us. Let's feel as though it's rising and rising and rising into our being. Every cell of our body is starting to quicken, bursting off the old vibrations and soaking in the new. God has come. It's like the crucifixion was the bursting away of old cells and old belief systems and neurons in the brain. And instead, grace is coming in, washing them all clean, washing out the residue, and leaving peace. Leaving the presence of God where there was once something else. And gradually begin to stretch out, but feel that peace staying with you. Good. How's everyone feeling? Good. Keep that with you. Keep that nice vibe. If you got teary, great. Just that too, absorb that. If you felt a sigh of old stuff falling away, be grateful. Dig that. Just soak that.